Well, Angela Morton's the host of Recovery Is on Armstrong's Neighborhood Channel. And Angela, you got a slew of other titles, but folks would probably recognize you on Armstrong's Neighborhood Channel as the host of that program.
Thanks to you, yes.
Oh, no, that's Kevin there.
Thanks to Kevin. Yeah, he'll love that shout out for with the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel and you for helping promote that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too.
I can't believe we're cruising through the second month of the year here, and sights and sounds of spring are in the distant future, but it's coming. It's coming. And you've been really busy. A lot of events.
We've had lots of events, and I think as you were talking about the being in the second month already, this is about that time when everybody's resolutions are either sticking or have been abandoned by now.
Yeah.
So a lot of people probably, because I work on the federal grants through the Rural Communities Opioid Response Program. We talk about drug and alcohol for anybody who doesn't know that. So the grants are through Hammett Health Foundation with UPMC, Western Behavioral Health at Safe Harbor, and all the drug and alcohol offices in the Tri-County area, Venango, Crawford, and Erie, and some other entities. But we work to try to increase awareness of substance use issues or drugs and alcohol. And at the new year, there are probably a lot of people who are like, I'm going to stop using whatever drug, or I'm going to stop drinking, or I'm going to cut back on my drinking, or cut back on drug use, or other addictive behaviors, overeating or overworking and not having a good work-life balance. So this is that time of year. People are probably, it's either really they're into it or they're like, yeah, this isn't working.
Yeah. Relapse back into old behaviors, right?
Well, and that's where it just came to my mind when you were talking about it. It can be a dangerous time for people if you've had a period of abstinence. Like if somebody has quit drinking or using, let's say prescription opiate pills, medications. So if you've been using for a long time and you have a tolerance, then you decide you're going to cut back or quit, your tolerance is reduced. And so you have that period of abstinence and your tolerance is down. And sometimes when people pick up again and start to use or start to drink, it can be really dangerous. Like there's a high risk of overdose, especially with opiates.
And I would say along the lines of what you were just saying too, I've seen that with food where somebody said, I'm dieting, I'm going to be good. And then they kind of get off that kick, right? So they start eating again. And it's not just a little bit, it's a lot. And instead of being at a certain weight, they've, blown past that just because of that same thing.
Well, we are creatures of habit, and it's, all the things that give us pleasure, give us a little rush of dopamine. If it's anything from like drugs or alcohol to the feeling you get of accomplishment at work, or eating something that tastes just so good, or having a glass of water when you're thirsty, or hugging a loved one, we get these dopamine surges. And when you take something away, you have to be prepared to manage what that's going to feel like. So when people are trying to cut back on their drug or alcohol use or overeating or any other addictive behavior, there needs to be an awareness of what that's going to feel like and what you might need. So instead of going back to, I'm going to abandon my diet or I'm going to use again, and it just feels so good to eat that piece of cake, turns into the whole cake. Or I'm just going to have one drink, turns into an entire bottle of liquor. Or I'm just going to have a half of a pill, and somebody ends up crushing and snorting it. And so it can be really dangerous because it's a slippery slope.
You haven't encountered anybody having problems at the water cooler, right? You mentioned drinking water.
I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
in my experience, yes. I've had some people who had a compulsion, they were compulsively sipping water all day long to the point where they were taxing their kidneys and needed to supplement sodium. So I mean, you said that joking, but no, I don't want people out there worrying. Keep drinking water; it's healthy,
okay.
But anything can become
yes
addictive or compulsive, and it turns to an addiction when you continue to do that thing despite the negative consequences.
Yeah. In youth, there's been this trend of cutting and yes. So there's it could be anything really that becomes, as you say, that negative that.
Well, yes, and any kind of self-harm when people engage in that, when they're struggling with depression or trying to deal with trauma, and they're trying to either not feel or maybe feel something, and they feel like they get some kind of release from hurting themselves, that's something that requires counseling or treatment the same way other addictions do, because it can be really dangerous, can easily slip into moving beyond just harming and actually being at risk of actually dying from it.
Mentioned that you host Recovery is on Armstrong's Neighborhood Channel. There are guests where I've noticed I think they're proud to have a platform to talk about the issues that you bring up, like almost like a sense of thank goodness somebody's talking about this. Do you get that sense when you're booking guests, or when you're having that conversation of setting up an interview with somebody, like really, like I've been talking about this and this is great?
I would hope that people would have a sense of, like, I don't know if the right word is pride, but feeling that accomplishment. And I'm honored to be in the presence of anybody who shares their hell and back story. And if we talked about it more often, people wouldn't have to be so afraid to admit, hey, I'm struggling with depression, or I've been taking more of my pills than I'm supposed to, and now I've had to buy some, or I'm drinking every day and not telling anyone in my family about it, because you might still be getting to work, but you're misusing pills or drinking, or it can escalate into other things. But yes, I think that I think people should be proud of the hard work that they get into recovery, that recovery is.
Yeah.
And again, just talking about it more can bring light to it, which is why I brought this, and I had told you about this screening tool that we've been giving it out to people, and I don't know how well it shows. Basically, it's just a laminated, spiral-bound substance use screening. So if counselors, doctors, primary care offices, dentist offices, WIC offices, anybody who would want to say, hey, what's been going on in your life? It really just takes like 3 minutes to say, do you drink? Have you been drinking, and how much if you have? Or do you take any pills that aren't yours? And being very specific, not something general like, do you take any medicines, or have you taken any psychiatric medication?
Yeah.
But putting it just in very basic terms. Do you struggle with mood? Are you struggling with drugs or alcohol? And this kind of gives you a guide for how to ask those questions, and has the QR codes for some actual tools.
I feel like sometimes when you go to the doctor's office, you get thrown off by questions like that. Like, do you drink? Well, like, what do you mean by that? Is it like a casual drink once in a while? Heavy drinking? Like, there's no specific, amount that you're asking. It's like, do you drink? Do you get depressed? Like, to have a bad day at work?
Everybody has some of that, right?
Yes.
Like, you can have a bad day and feel down, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you necessarily are living in a clinical depression.
Right.
So people would have to know how to screen for that. And I think a lot of doctors will ask those questions, or nurses will ask them. And with all credit to how busy nurses and doctors are, I also just compel the importance of, when I've had doctors say to me, I don't have those people in my practice, or I don't see anything that involves, quote, those people. Whether it's somebody who's struggling with depression, or being suicidal, or somebody struggling with drugs or alcohol. And my answer is always, oh, you are seeing those people.
Yeah.
They may not be talking about it. So if you ask the questions, almost everywhere you go, there's somebody who's struggling with something, if you take the time to ask and really listen.
But how often do you hear, oh, somebody committed suicide, and you go, I never would have thought. Like, that person doesn't seem to be that person.
Which is why we need to talk, when we talk about someone dying by suicide, or dying by accidental overdose, we need to be talking about it more. So what we call that is a disenfranchised kind of grief. People aren't walking around saying, hey, this is how I lost a person, because there's still so much stigma around substance use. But we need to be able to talk about it more. And that's why there's all these programs out there like Let's Talk, and really getting people comfortable saying, I lost this person, they died by suicide, or I lost a friend or a family member who was struggling with addiction, and we didn't know how much they were struggling, but they were using and had an accidental overdose. So the more I just keep saying it, I appreciate you having me here each month, because the more we talk about this, somebody might be listening and can say, you know what, I'm going to be brave and talk about it. I'm going to mention it to my doctor today.
Well, my point there was, we say this stuff when we hear, those stories, but, for a doctor or anybody to say, I don't have anybody, in this office that is like that. The point is, you don't know. You
right?
don't know what somebody's going through.
Absolutely. So that's why I try to convey the importance of even just weaving a couple questions in there. And people might think, oh, I didn't ask that kid because they were so young. Well, drug use and alcohol use, tobacco use is starting younger and younger. So to say that I didn't ask a 12-year-old about it would be remiss, because you might be the person that keeps them from heading further down a path. So we just need to get comfortable and be frank about it. Sometimes people whisper like, oh, that person has trouble with drugs, or this person, yeah, let's mention the drinking. Instead of saying, can we talk openly about the other medical condition here? Because I've been in those situations where someone's saying, oh, do you have this, this, or this, asking about all these different symptoms, but not necessarily saying, do you have any other, diagnoses? And even if you're not diagnosed, is it potentially there? And then being able to say, yes, this person has an alcohol use disorder, or a stimulant use disorder, or whatever they may be using.
Is there a connection, or is there a percentage, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, where there is an addiction, but there's another...
Like a line to be drawn?
Well, but there's other factors at play that the person's dealing with, bipolar issues, depression, other things. Is there a connection there, or not really?
Every situation is different. So you could say, like, statistically, is there a higher risk of substance use if you're struggling with mental health concerns? People do self-medicate and start very young doing that, saying, hey, I had all this anxiety as a kid, and I didn't know what that was. Nobody talked about it. And the first time I had a drink and that feeling went away, then you remember that. That's the thing that your brain says, we felt better when we did this, let's do more of that. And it becomes a really slippery slope onto a path of struggling with other substances to continue that feeling. But also, it can go both ways. Like, substance use can also cause a lot of mood changes that can contribute to that. But I've said before to you when we talk here that trauma is the number one risk factor for substance use. So when somebody experiences trauma, and then they're trying to make the feelings, if they're not addressing that trauma or in therapy or something, that some people end up using substances to cover the trauma.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be the simplest thing. You go in for a procedure you're going to have some pain, so you're prescribed something, and that just leads to other things. So, it can be something really simple. It can be something pretty complicated. Let's do this real quick. You're watching the Morning Drill on Stream Television and on Armstrong's Neighborhood Channel, and listening to it on the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network. Angela Morton with us here this morning. You brought in some other things here this morning. What do you have for us?
Well, we talk on the grant projects with Crawford, Venango, and rural Erie County. We talk about what we call evidence-based, because we want to not just say, hey, we think this works, but there's evidence that says, here are some ways we can reduce the risk of overdose in communities. And one of those is by making Narcan or naloxone nasal spray more available to anybody and everybody who wants it. It's like teaching CPR to a community. If people have this small nasal spray kit with them and they see someone who has overdosed or you believe has overdosed, that Narcan nasal spray can save a life. Likewise, this drug disposal pouch, this happens to be a doTERRA brand, but this is a drug disposal pouch. There's smaller versions, but this is the large packet that holds, I think, like 90 pills. But you rip it open, and you dump pills or liquid or pouches into it and add some warm water, let it fizz for 30 seconds, seal it up and shake it. It's environmental friendly. It renders it inert so that even if somebody got a hold of it, if it had opiate or stimulant pills in it, and somebody found it or wanted to get into it, it would be neutralized. So It deactivates medication and disposes of it.
And how do folks find those?
Every county in Pennsylvania and probably across the nation, but Venango County, Crawford, and Erie County, they all have a supply of these. We have them through the grant project, and you can go to our website at www.recoverysnwpa.org. And my phone number and contact are on there. There are other email addresses on there, but we can provide them. Counties can provide them. They also can provide free Narcan to anybody who wants it. So you can call the county or go to your county substance use program and ask for free Narcan.
I see there's also training for naloxone. And that's a series, right?
Yes.
Can somebody, do you have to start at a certain time, or can anybody jump in and learn?
So initially, it was required to be trained. It was like for first responders, and you got this training.
Okay.
And then they realized we need it out there in the communities. We don't want training to be a barrier. It's ideal for people to still know what they're doing, but you don't have to attend a formal training. When you open the box, there's like a map, an infographic inside that shows you exactly what to do. You call 911, you put one spray in one nostril, lay them on their side, and hopefully it restores breathing, but if not, you use the second spray that's in the box. So that's essentially what I just said is the training, but people usually want to learn a little bit more about what Narcan is and how it works, and then just feel a little more equipped and a little safer about using it. But Narcan is safe. There are very few risks in terms of what if somebody has a low blood sugar or a heart attack. And so when in doubt, use it. It could save a life. So they can attend, we have a monthly training, and it's like once a month on a Thursday through our Recovery is NWPA training series, and that is on the website. There's a calendar. We offer free trainings that are open to anybody. The community can attend, professionals can attend and receive free continuing education credits for doctors, nurses, and social workers.
Oh, wow.
And the Narcan training is every month. So people can log on to that. You don't even have to turn your camera on. You can log in and listen.
Oh, okay. So they don't have to go someplace to take that class.
It's online. You just click. I think the link is there. And if not, I think you can email and we'll send the link. That one may have an active link, or you can just click and join.
Making it easy for folks. That's great. And I would say also very important, right? So
Absolutely.
What are some areas where folks, I mean, you mentioned some of them, but where would it be important maybe for somebody to consider listening in on a program like that? I mean, you mentioned, our emergency personnel folks, but I mean, who else? People involved with?
Everyone.
Okay.
I mean, I would say everyone can benefit from knowing. I made sure my elderly parents had a kit on hand because they both had been prescribed medications after a surgery. And people don't think that maybe somebody who processes medications more slowly or is on a lot of medications or has just undergone anesthesia that they could overdose. But I make sure elders have them. Libraries, convenience stores. I just heard a story about a grocery store where someone had overdosed in the store. Because someone could use and then walk into a library or a convenience store or a doctor's office or anywhere, and we all should have it. I hear stories all the time about somebody who said, I knew I could run to the pharmacy because there's a standing order at every pharmacy in the Commonwealth, and they ran to the pharmacy and got a kit and saved someone's life in their neighborhood.
Wow.
So we should know where it is and have it on hand, and if anybody has any questions about whether we should have that available or not, it's about saving a life. If we knew that we could save someone's life from any medical condition, we should morally be responsible to save each other's lives in those kind of situations.
Most folks have those available when it comes to those who are responding to situations. I'm just thinking of sporting events, things like that. Is there a trainer on hand? Is that part of their tool bag of life-saving things that they could offer?
I would like to think so.
Okay.
It should be. I mean, for what I do for a living, everybody should have that. So yes, all EMS know about it. Fire, police, they usually know. They either have it on them or know where to get it immediately. But I've had people say, "Can I have some for my school bus? Can I have some to keep at my church?" And we say yes, anybody can have it. So again, it started several years ago as a naloxone for first responders program. And I think they still call it that through the state, but anybody can have access to it. If somebody says, I like that idea, I want to have it around, or, hey, college dorms should have them, I wouldn't be sending anybody off to college without a kit in, these times.
All right. Angela, folks have questions, want more information. How do they get a hold of you?
They can reach out on our website, recoveryisnwpa.org. Or any of the drug and alcohol offices in Crawford, Venango, Erie County, or whatever county someone's listening from, they can call their local substance use program for all these resources.
And if somebody has a question on that, they could still call you, and maybe you could help them get to the right spot?
Absolutely.
Okay. And again, there's a lot of information that's available on the website, a lot of information by talking to Angela, or catch her show on Armstrong's Neighborhood channel.
And the 800 number I always like to add in there. The national helpline is 1-800-662-HELP, HELP, and that will connect you with services anywhere in the country.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me, Luke.
All the best.
Bye.